Though the WWE Network continues to add to its already vast library of content, there are still some gaps that really need to be filled. Yes, it's great having every episode of Raw, SmackDown, Nitro, Thunder, countless documentaries, stuff from the territories, a glut of pay-per-views, and a million other things, but as the old saying goes, you always want what you can't have. And I want me some Shotgun Saturday Night, Action Zone, WCW Pro, and whatever other crappy C show I can get my hands on, damn it! I'm sure that most, if not all of those shows will be uploaded in due course, but I'm not so sure about some other standalone shows. Now, WWE has a lot of footage sitting and waiting in their insane vaults, and I don't expect absolutely everything to be made available, but some things that are missing from the network have aired elsewhere, such as on the old subscription channel WWE 24/7/Classics on Demand, or have otherwise been released on video or DVD. Since Classics on Demand is now defunct and I haven't seen a DVD player since around 2015, it would be nice to have these ready to enjoy at the press of a button. I'm Adam Pachisi from Cultaholic.com, and these are 10 major shows missing from the WWE Network. Join us, but before you do, I should mention that there are of course a couple of other standalone shows missing from the network that are not featured in this list, like the WCW New Japan Supercards and Collision in Korea, and stuff like the WWE Diva Swimsuit Specials, but I don't think we're about to see footage that is likely part-owned by the King of Sports, and I'm not 12 years old anymore, so I'm no longer pining to see Stacy Keibler in a two-piece. Number 10, WWE Mayhem in Manchester. There are plenty of WWE's UK exclusive pay-per-views for you to enjoy on the WWE Network, with One Night Only, Capital Carnage, No Mercy, and every insurrection and rebellion just a mouse click away. The one that you won't be able to watch, however, is Mayhem in Manchester. Taking place just a week after WrestleMania 14 at a packed Manchester arena, the show brought the new WWE attitude to England for the first time. While an abbreviated VHS tape of the show with highlights and some complete matches was released, and there are a few clips on WWE's YouTube channel too, it has not since found its way onto the network. Why? I have no bloody idea, because the show wasn't half bad based on what I could tell. It was by no means spectacular, but any show with a double main event of Steve Austin versus Triple H in a WWE title match and The Undertaker battling Kane is worth at least a curious glance. While Stone Cold vs. The Game is the best thing on the card, and even then it was pretty short, the most notable thing about the event is that the dead man was forced to wrestle in street clothes after the airline lost his luggage, giving fans a sneak peek at Biker Taker 2 years before the arrival of the American Badass. Number 9, WCW Millennium Final. There wasn't much to celebrate about WCW in its dying days, but as bad as things were in the United States, the company knew they still had a big international fan base and could pack arenas on the other side of the Atlantic. So the entire crew flew to Oberhausen, Germany on November 16th, 2000 for an exclusive pay-per-view called Millennium Final, capping off a successful European tour, which also included Nitro and Thunder tapings in London and Manchester respectively. Attracting 9,000 fans, Millennium Final resoundingly outdrew the 2 US pay-per-views that bookended it. As for the show itself, there are various versions floating about on the Great Wide Web, but it has not, to this point, been made available on the WWE Network. One reason for this might be the absence of an English language commentary track, but surely WWE are capable of, I don't know, say inviting Disco Inferno and let's say Lance Storm to their television studios to record one. There were some big matches on the card, including a WCW title match between Booker T and Scott Steiner, a Kevin Nash and Sting bout for the prestigious WCW European Cup, and an actual title change with countryman Alex Wright and fill-in partner Hugh Morris winning the tag straps from the Natural Born Thrillers. Das ist fantastisch! Das ist fantastisch! Das ist fantastisch! It means this is awesome, you uncultured swine. Number 8, Terry Funk's WrestleFest. I think we can all agree that the WWE Network could use a little more, okay, a lot more, Terry Funk. The Funker is one of the all-time greats, and given his long journeyman career, he pops up on the app everywhere from the territories to WCW, ECW, WWE, and beyond. There's no shortage of Terry Funk for you to enjoy for your tenner, but one thing conspicuous by its absence is Terry Funk's WrestleFest from 1997, aka the Terry Funk Retirement Show. Even though though Terry Funk Retirement Show is an oxymoron, and the man from the Double Cross Ranch was back lacing his boots up just weeks after his own send-off, WrestleFest is a great show and celebration of an extraordinary life and career. And while the main event between Funk and then WWE Champion Bret Hart is on the network as a hidden gem, WWE could do us all a favour and upload the rest of the bloody show already. Because in an era of intense competition and the Monday Night Wars, WWE, WCW and ECW wrestlers were all present to wrestle and pay their respects, leading to some intriguing matches like Rob Van Dam against Dory Funk Jr. and Mankind taking on Sabu. Number 7, WWE Road to WrestleMania 22. Though WWE have long had a presence in Australia, it took them a little longer to find their way to neighbours New Zealand. WWE finally found themselves putting on a show in the land of the long white cloud on the road to WrestleMania 22 in March 2006. Entertaining around 24,000 inside the Westpac Stadium in Wellington, the show was a hot ticket and, capitalising on the enthusiasm generated by the fans starved of live wrestling, WWE brought a camera crew with them and filmed the show. Matches from the event, including a triple threat World Heavyweight title match between Kurt Angle, The Undertaker and Mark Henry, Booker T taking on Chris Benoit for the US title, and a grudge match between Randy Orton and Rey Mysterio, were edited and broadcast on WWE 24/7, with Michael Cole and Taz laying down commentary from Stamford. Though the action never really got above house show level, the fans went wild for it, and it was a good sampling of what could be seen on SmackDown around that time. WWE officials were happy enough with the response that they continued touring the country for years after, though whoever makes the decisions on the WWE network is clearly in no hurry to add this show anytime soon. Number 6, WWE XPERIENCE 1996. A decade to the day after WWE drew almost 70,000 people to Exhibition Stadium in Toronto for a show entitled The Big Event, headlined by Hulk Hogan defending the WWE title against Paul Orndorff, WWE attempted to replicate that feat with a show in the same stadium. Dubbed WWE XPERIENCE, the 1996 event only drew a fraction under 22,000 fans, by no means a bad crowd, but one that obviously looked a bit smaller in such large surroundings. There are stories circulating that the show was broadcast as the first internet pay-per-view, but I can't find anything to properly back that up, and I feel like you'd probably get a better picture quality by trying to stream it through a calculator than by using mid-90s dial-up, eh? But WWE cameras were there to document the occasion, as footage of the event, as well as the related festivities during the day, such as the Fan Fest, was shown on the September 6th episode of Raw. So perhaps one day we'll find what all the fuss was about. It's certainly a loaded card, with a main event of Shawn Michaels vs Goldust in a WWE title ladder match, ably supported by a Mankind vs Undertaker casket match, and a Sid vs Vader lumberjack affair. Speaking of the master and ruler of the world, he might have been a tad tired come bell time after having a tug of war with an elephant earlier in the day. And no, that's not a euphemism. Number 5, WWE WrestleFest 1988. While a lot of the Coliseum video releases have been made available on the WWE network, there are nonetheless some notable omissions. One of those is WrestleFest 1988, an event that wasn't a pay-per-view or even televised, but was taped for home video release. Some of the matches cut from the video to keep the running time at 2 hours were aired on Primetime Wrestling in the weeks following the show. Emanating from the Milwaukee County Stadium on July 31st, WrestleFest drew around 25,000 people, most of whom came to see the cage match between Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant. A marquee match if there ever was one. The Hulkster against the 8th wonder of the world inside the big blue bars wasn't a classic by any means. Andre was suffering physically at this point, but the fans are very into it and it has an incredible aura about it, even if the action isn't gonna get the Meltzer excited. Elsewhere on a stacked show, Randy Savage defended his WWE title against Ted DiBiase, a bout that showed up on the Macho Madness video. The Ultimate Warrior took on Bobby Heenan in a weasel suit match, Rick Rude and Jake Roberts collided, and Demolition defended their tag titles against the British Bulldogs. As well as matches from the event showing up here, there, and everywhere, an edited version did air on WWE 24/7, and there was a Tagged Classics DVD release here in the UK, but as of now, your $9.99 a month doesn't give you access. Number 4, Super Tuesday 2002. In the early days of the original WWE brand split in 2002, wrestlers from Raw and SmackDown were typically kept away from each other, only sharing the same space on pay-per-views, which were co-branded productions. In a bid to hype the upcoming Survivor Series, UPN aired a 1-hour special called Super Tuesday on November 12th. The concept was simple: one match from Raw, one match from SmackDown, and a little bit of inter-promotional fun with a red versus blue, or tan versus black, bikini contest. From the SmackDown side, Eddie Guerrero took on Chris Benoit and Edge in a predictable predictably tidy triple threat match, with Latino Heat getting the win and planting a seed for his and Chavo's triumph in the three-way tag team title match days later in Madison Square Garden. Then there was the aforementioned bikini contest between Trish Stratus and Tori Wilson, which had no official winner since Nydia interfered. And from Raw, a 10-man tag pitting Triple H, Chris Jericho, Christian and 3-Minute Warning against Booker T, Kane, Rob Van Dam, Jeff Hardy and Bubba Dudley. The Cerebral Assassin pinned the Big Red Machine. Aside from that, there were the requisite interviews and video packages. It wasn't an important show, but it should still be on the network, though for some reason, it isn't. Number 3, AAA When Worlds Collide. You may be wondering why an event produced by Mexican promotion AAA should be included on the WWE network. Because even though it was a showcase for Lucha Libre, it was actually produced and broadcasted via pay-per-view thanks to Eric Bischoff and WCW, who helped to get the show picked up by American providers. And what a show it is too. Likely the first exposure to this style of wrestling for many fans in the States, the card is stuffed with quality action and provides a look at some performers who would become major stars in the years to come. For example, Rey Mysterio and Psychosis, who tore it up in a thrilling 6-man tag match. Or Eddie Guerrero and Art Barr, aka Los Gringos Locos, who wrestled their last match as a team, losing a thrilling 2 out of 3 falls hair versus mask match to El Hijo del Santo and Octagon. And Conan, the biggest star in Mexico at the time, who was in the steel cage match main event. Heralded by WWE.com as the best pay-per-view you've never seen, hey, I have an idea. Why don't you put it on the WWE network so we can see it? When Worlds Collide is an important historical show of real class, and it has Louis Spicolli wrestling as Madonna's boyfriend, so I mean, come on. Number 2, WWE SHOWDOwn at SHEA 1980. Described by WWE themselves as the precursor to WrestleMania, the company's shows at New York Shea Stadium in the 1970s and early 80s are an important part of its history. Of all the SHOWDOwn at SHEA events, the one from 1980 is probably the most interesting and the one that should definitely be on the network. Attracting a not too shabby 36,000 people, the card was headlined by a super personal steel cage match between Bruno Sammartino, former mentor to his opponent Larry Zbyszko. It was a hell of a fight and a great way to cap off what had been a superior show. Other highlights include Bob Backlund and Pedro Morales winning the tag titles from the Wild Samoans, a decent intercontinental title affair between Ken Patera and Tony Atlas, some cutting-edge junior heavyweight action courtesy of Chavo Guerrero and Tatsumi Fujinami, an appearance from another Japanese legend, Antonio Inoki, and an early meeting between Andre the Giant and Hulk Hogan. Clips of select matches are on WWE's website, and you can see Inoki's bout on the network as a hidden gem, but the rest of the show is AWOL, despite the complete version airing on WWE 24/7 with commentary by Mick Foley and Michael Cole. Perhaps WWE want to preserve the myth that the Hulkster only slammed Andre at WrestleMania 3 and not here 7 years earlier, but it really ought to be available to subscribers. Number 1, WWE Donny Brooke Theater. If there's one thing better than good wrestling, it's terrible wrestling. And if there's one thing that's better than terrible wrestling, it's a terrible wrestling-themed show without any actual wrestling on it. Back in the dark days of the mid-90s, WWE tried to prove that they were still down with the kids by producing a show called Donny Brooke Theater. Because if there's one thing that's gonna show how hip you are, it's naming the show after an expression that hadn't been used in widespread circulation since the days of silent movies. Donny Brooke Theater was Vince and Company's stab at a Saturday Night Live / Mad TV type sketch show, sort of like an obscure, terrible spin-off of Tuesday Night Titans. The pilot, and that's all that was ever filmed, was a disaster, with Todd Pettingill narrating a couple of unfunny segments with a dodgy accent, including Yokozuna and Fuji playing cards, only to be interrupted by the Huckster, played by Howard Finkel, who was then sat on by Yoko. It's abysmal, and while you're not missing much if you've never ever seen it in your life, it should still be on the network as it's an odd piece of ephemera, and since it once aired on WWE 24/7, there's no real reason why it shouldn't be.